So, welcome to MyFundBazaar Academy and welcome to our initiative, our debut talk show, Ask the Lawyer. As Henrietta Newton Martin has rightly said, to mitigate complications and aid in the procedure of devolution of assets after death, a will has to be well planned and drafted. And to break it all down for us today, we have a prestigious guest who is a part of the MyFundBazaar family, and we are extremely humbled to share the platform with Dr. Neela Gokhale. Even though most of you would know her, I would like to enlighten you all a bit more about Mrs. Gokhale. Having studied LLM at the Pune University, she was advisor to the chairperson, National Commission for the Scheduled Castes in New Delhi in the year 2006. She practiced cases related to property law, service matters, contractual law, as well as conducted various workshops in the rural areas on the subject of legal illiteracy amongst women. Not just that, she organized short courses in adult education wherein housemaids and women living in slum areas were taught basic reading and writing. Now, these are only some of her achievements. Beyond that, she is a lovely and warm person with whom I connected and continue to connect with on a deeper level. And I'm sure she'll agree with me. It is absolutely lovely having you here, Mrs. Gokhale. Now, as we sip our evening coffees, and a lot of you even know, today's webinar is dedicated to the will. In other words, a legal document that expresses a person's wishes as to how their property is to be distributed after their death, and also as to which person is to manage the property until its final distribution. Now, that's not me saying that, that's Google's definition of the will, of course. With the expert herself present here, I am going to decode the nitty-gritties and the legalities of the will with a mix of questions most of you have been asking us over the week, and for us to better understand how all of this works. So, we're going to run through some basic questions here of everything about the will, and we're going to start with our first question. The first question is, how should one go about making a will? In other words, what all do they need to keep in mind when making a will? Over to you, Mrs. Neela.
Good evening, Shruti, and good evening to all your viewers. First of all, let me congratulate MyFundBazaar and the great initiative which you have taken to actually enlighten and make aware, spread awareness about basic legal issues. A very, very warm and a very, congratulations to MyFundBazaar. I'm very happy to be here and chatting with you and all your viewers. Shruti, your first question, why a will, right? And what's the right time to make a will? So as the old proverb goes, where there's a will, there's a way, right? So you need to find a way. When do you make a will? There's no really a correct time to make it or a wrong time to make it, in fact. Because I seeing the uncertainties in life, just having passed the second wave and the facing a pandemic of coronavirus, we see what all tragedies have unfolded before us. So that brings, to the fore the question of making a will. We all feel that, I'm too old. I'm not old enough to make a will. I don't have so many assets. I don't have, I haven't earned my first million. I don't really need to make a will. But that's not correct. Why do you make a will? The first purpose in making a will is to ensure that one, whatever your actually wishes are in respect of how to dispose your income or your assets and your whatever savings, whatever you have earned during a lifetime, how do you want to dispose this? Who do you want to bequeath your lifetime money and investments to, and your properties, right? So that is what a will is all about. There is no, like I said, there is no correct time or there is no wrong time to make a will. But I, as a lawyer, and even as a person who has experienced and seen so many disputes of people who actually come to me and in fact share their experiences with me in the course of their consultancy. I feel that one should make a will even if you have say 10,000 rupees in your bank account, or if you don't, if even if you have half a share in some company, or if even if you don't have anything but your own say you just have one flat or you just have one vehicle, something like that, I think you should make a will. The reason behind this is after you're gone, you don't want your legal heirs, as in or your loved ones, quarreling amongst themselves, or somebody or something unfair happening in respect of your loved ones. Correct? There may be a dominant brother or a dominant sister or two brothers who really don't want to hurt you or don't want to hurt themselves also, but then they just cannot find that mid path of settlement or amicable resolution. So if you as a parent or you as a human being or a person who has got some property, has accumulated some certain savings in a bank account, if you make a will, formally write it, then it puts a quietus to all that little discontent and dissatisfaction amongst themselves, and also it does not it secures a relationship of amongst your loved ones after you're no more there. So that is one reason, and the most important reason why we all need to make a will on time, and tidy up your affairs before while you're here and earning and kicking and about. I think that's the time you should make a will.
Okay, that's a lot we have learned right there in the first question itself. So, are you telling me that once your will is made and you are ready to kind of go ahead with that, you can't change or revoke your will?
Yeah, it is a very important question. Like a lot of people think that now that I've made a will, and if I acquire more properties, or if I want to change my mind, if I want to give it not to A but to B, something like this, there is absolutely no limitation on the number of times that you can change your will. You can change your will a million times, 1,000 times, how many ever times you want to. If you have to make just a small addition or a small modification, you can even just make a something called a codicil. That is a CODICIL. It's a small addendum to a will, and you can just write it at the bottom of the will that I have said all these things in the will, and I want to just change or substitute something by something else. Then that is called a codicil. Okay, it's an addition or an amendment to the original will. But there is no restriction on the number of times you can make a will. If you change your mind, you can just tear the first will or the previous will and make a new one. Making a will is very easy. Now, before you ask me, Shruti, about the how to go about making a will, let me just answer that right away. Making a will is the most easiest thing in the world to do. All you have to do is just take a blank sheet piece of paper, take your pen and pen down everything what you have, all your make a list of all your movable and immovable properties, and one by one dispose them off, will them or bequeath them as we call it, to the people or to your loved ones or to other persons whom you want to bequeath them to. That is all. Now, do I have to go to a lawyer to make a will? No, you don't. But it's always better, to have a certain certainty, or make a draft in an unambiguous way. It's always better to consult an expert or consult a lawyer or consult somebody who knows who has consulted a lawyer as to how should I make a will. Now, all you have to do is make a list of all your properties, immovable and movable, and bequeath them and write them. I want to bequeath this particular flat or this amount in this say saving bank account to XYZ person, to my daughter, to my son, or to my maid who's lived with me and looked after me and cared for me. Alright, so this is the way you make a will. Now, if you go to a lawyer will advise you, draft it properly so that there are no uncertainties, there are no ambiguities in your will. Now, suppose you have bequeathed something to your son. You need two witnesses to attest, to sign, and say that they have witnessed you signing the will. Okay, so the person who is making a will is known as a testator. Who executes or whose will it is, he is known as a testator. Every will requires two witnesses signing at the bottom of the will, saying that yes, I have signed here as a witness to mean and signify that I have seen the testator, the person making the will, sign this will in my presence. So that is what a witness will testify to, and nothing else. The witness need not know whatever the contents of the will are. The witness need not know or read the contents of the will. You need not disclose whatever you have written in the will to the person who is signing as a witness. You need two witnesses who will testify and attest that I have seen this particular testator sign this will. That's as far as our witnesses are concerned. Logically and obviously, the witness cannot be a benefactor of the will. Somebody who is getting some benefit out of the will cannot say that, yes, I have seen this person sign the will. Okay, so that's a very important thing to remember. Now, at the bottom of the will, once you make a will, you have signed it, the two witnesses have signed it. Do I need a doctor's certificate? No, you don't need a doctor's certificate. It is not a mandatory thing in law. However, as a lawyer, I would advise whoever makes a will that ensure that a doctor, your physician, or any person who knows you, a medical practitioner who has been around with you, who you have faith in, sign a will and certify it, saying that you have made the will when you are in a very good mental and physical condition.
Sorry, but I had a doubt there. So
Yes,
we were talking about the witness and the benefactor, right? Like they need not be the same person. But what if it
correct.
is? Then does anything change?
Yes, a witness, if a benefactor in the will is a witness, to that extent, the benefactor will not get anything. If there's a quarrel or if there is some, a challenge to the will to the extent that the witness has got something out of the will not stand. And if it is, if the, of course somebody is challenging it, if nobody is challenging it, if it's all fine with the in the family, then of course it's all in the understanding in the family. But if somebody challenges it, then the benefactor, who is also the witness, will not get anything of that will. Okay, Shruti, can I just complete the point in respect of the doctor certificate?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So it is not, like I said, it is not compulsory, it is not mandatory that a doctor has to certify in respect of your mental and physical health. But as a lawyer, and like I said before, it's always better that if you're making a will with the intention that everything after you is going to be split and is going to be disposed of in a very fair and an equitable manner, then I would suggest that yes, your person, family physician or some other doctor who you have faith in, always certifies that you have made this will while you are in a good mental and physical condition. So these are the the criteria or ingredients when you make a will. Now, like I said, Shruti, when we were just chatting before the program, there are two kinds of wills. One is a privileged will, and the other is an unprivileged will. As far as, since we are, since most of our viewers might perhaps be persons of the armed forces or the central forces, I would just like to say that the wills that they make when they are at the border are known as privileged wills. So as far as privileged wills are concerned, they can make a will. They need not even write a will. Whoever is with them, so their buddy or their colleague, or their, anybody is there with them, they can just orally tell them that I want this XYZ things. I have this property and I want to dispose this property in a particular manner. It has to be witnessed by another person, and the person to whom I have spoken can go and write it down, and then and that becomes my will. If I survive, then I can repudiate it, or I can ratify it. So this is what happens when in respect of armed forces personnel who are at the border, and if they don't have any mechanism wherein they can sit quietly and write a will, they can just narrate their intentions and their wishes to somebody else with them, and that becomes their will. Okay, so these are called privileged wills. Now, for the rest of us who are not part of the armed forces at a particular border, we make wills which are known as unprivileged wills. So for unprivileged wills, all the criteria which I told you, the witnesses cannot be benefactors, the doctor certificate, and so on and so forth. This is what will apply to unprivileged wills for ordinary people like you and I. Okay, uh, uh, just to complete this, the ingredient part of the process. So many people ask us whether a will is to be compulsorily registered, or does a will have to be registered, or does a will lose its sanctity if it is not registered, not notarized, or can it just be kept in a drawer at my home? My answer is a will is not a compulsorily registrable document. A will need not even be notarized. A will can simply be signed and attested by two witnesses, and it has the same evidentiary value as that which is a notarized will or a registered will. This doesn't mean that you cannot notarize or cannot go and register your will, but legally it has the same it has the same value as a notarized will. So registration or notary is not compulsory at all as far as wills are concerned. Over to you, Shruti.
Wow. Again, we are continuing to learn so much about the will. I mean, that was wonderful that you've covered different aspects and the kind of questions people have. And even for the armed forces, a lot of viewers who are watching us, who will be watching us, are from the armed forces background. So, I mean, if there are any questions, guys, please do not hesitate to mention them in the comments below. We are definitely going to get back to you with the answers. Okay, now moving on. So now, since our country has got a lot of languages, dialects even, is there any particular language the will should be written in, or how does that work, considering there are so many languages out here in our country?
So, like I said, making a will is one of the most easiest things in the all contracts and drafting of all contracts or any transaction recording. Making a will is the easiest thing. So, it can be in any language. In fact, I would recommend that it should be in a language which is familiar with the testator. So, if I speak Marathi, then I should make my will in Marathi. If I speak English, if I am comfortable in English, then perhaps I should make it in English. That's also very necessary, because in case a will is challenged, in case, say for example, I'm a person coming from a very rural area. I've got agricultural land, I've got cattle, I've got so many bigas of a mango orchard, and so on and so forth. And but I don't understand English. I go to a very I come to a lawyer in Delhi and say that I want to make a will, and I have 2-3 pages of a firm making a will, and it's all in English, and so say perhaps the farmers put his thumb in it, and written after the demise of the farmer, say for example the will is challenged by his children, by his legal heirs. The most important, the most obvious, and the common ground on which that will can be challenged is that, oh, my father never understood English, right? So whether the will was read out to him and explained to him becomes a question mark. So I would advise that whoever the testator is, whatever language the testator is comfortable in, the will may be made in that particular language. So there's absolutely no restriction on the language in which a will needs to be made. Just elaborating on that, there's one very important, interesting point which comes to my mind here. A woman, unmarried woman, once she gets married, her will stands revoked. Her will made prior to her marriage stands revoked. A very very are still, we come from our laws are still have the colonial mindset yet. So as soon as we get, they have changed their laws, but we haven't yet, and we need to do that. Somebody needs to fight this out and declare all these things to be unconstitutional. But till then, the legal position is this: that an unmarried woman can make a will, but once she gets married, that will which has been made prior to her marriage automatically stands revoked. So she has to make another will. Okay, so that's a very a very bizarre and interesting this thing as far as this legal position is concerned. Now, why I'm saying this and why I'm sharing this with you is because a lot of women officers, are officers or troops are getting commissioned in the armed forces or in the this thing in the services. Now, for them, they are commissioned when they are unmarried. And and I know, Shruti, that generally the armed forces ensure that a will is made as soon as an officer gets commissioned, along with the party order. The wills are made. They are very formatted wills, and you can just fill up that form, and a will is made, right? So definitely, once the woman gets married, once the woman officer gets married, she should remember that then she has to change the will. Otherwise, that will which is made prior to her marriage is automatically revoked. That's one very important point that our viewers should I want to share with your viewers. Over to you.
Wow, so that was definitely a pro tip there about women who are unmarried going to get married, and after marriage how the will kind of changes for them. So that's definitely a pro tip. I think we deserve a like over there. Please, pause this video, hit the like button before you continue watching us. Okay, meanwhile, let's move on to the next question. So yeah, whatever language that of course the witness best understands is the language one should be writing their will in, from what we have understood so far. Okay, now so moving on to the next question. We did discuss, Mrs. Neela, about the importance of a lawyer, but how important is it really for a lawyer to be present in terms of making the will and fulfilling those requirements of the will?
Like I said, you don't need a lawyer to make a will. But I would always suggest that yes, you do consult a lawyer, because there are so many things. For example, I have a flat which I have, which I'm a co-owner, right? So I generally nowadays, when you get married, you buy property in joint name with your husband or your partner, right? So when you are making a will, we have to remember that we can make a will only of property which we own, over which you have absolute ownership right. Correct. So you can't make a will of your entire house property if you are only a co-owner. So your husband's share or your partner's share, your co-owner's share, is not cannot be disposed of by you. So all these things, say for example, you have a joint account, and in that joint account, out of 100 rupees, you are owner of only 50 rupees, right? So you can make a will only of that 50 rupees. Now the rest of the 50 rupees which belong to your joint owner or joint account holder with yourself, that 50 rupees also, perhaps you may be the legal heir of that person also, but then amongst, you have so many, that other person may have so many legal heirs. For example, we take the example of a husband and wife. Okay, so the husband dies, right? And the husband's property is 50% in that bank account. That 50% will devolve as per his will, but my 50, that out of that 50%, I also may get something. So I am owner of my 50% in addition to whatever I get out of my husband's will. So all these small things, a lawyer would be able to advise you, because you have to remember that you can make a will only of the property which you own, only of the property which you have acquired. Say for example, like after 2005, you know that there's an amendment in the Hindu Succession Act, right? So under the act now, all the women, all the daughters, wives, sisters, mothers can be co-partners, and you get equal share along with your brother or along with the son. Correct. So say for example, if you have acquired property in your inheritance, so you need to know, in order to make a will in respect of that property, you need to know whether you are absolute owner of that property. Correct. Otherwise, you may just say that I bequeath this to XYZ, I bequeath this to XYZ, and you may be thinking that it is your property, but it isn't. And then perhaps you are unfair to somebody, giving some property to somebody, one legal heir, which you don't own, and then ultimately it gets challenged, and then some one loved one remains without anything. So in order to cover all the legalities, I would advise that you do consult a lawyer before you make a will. Though it is not necessary, if your assets and your the funds and your properties are very convenient, are very tidied up, then you don't need to consult a lawyer at all. But if you want to understand what you can bequeath, how you need to bequeath them, how do you want to distribute your property and assets between two legal heirs, so that ultimately it's not very difficult for them also to share the properties. I would advise that you do consult a lawyer.
Okay, so again, that's a lot about properties that we learned in that question, and the wonderful answer given by you, Mrs. Gokhale. Now moving on, of course, it's again human tendency to wake up so late into doing a lot of things they should be doing in life, as simple as making a will. I mean, we all do it. But consider a scenario where someone hasn't even made a will at all, right? So where does all that inheritance, hard work, all the luck, love, everything they've collected over a lifetime, where does it automatically go?
So you have something called the Succession Act. Okay. So for Hindus, you have the Hindu Succession Act, and for non-Hindus, you have the Indian Succession Act, because the Hindu Succession Act is only applicable to Hindus, and there are the succession matters. Personal law of the individual kicks in. So if at all, say for example, a Hindu woman has married a Muslim man, or a Hindu woman has married a Christian man, any non-Hindu, right? And they have married under the Special Marriage Act, which is a secular law, right? So, for example, let me just break it up for you. I can marry, if I as a Hindu, or I as a Muslim, or I as a Christian, I can get married under my personal law, correct? Let's take the case of a Hindu. So I am a Hindu, so I can get married under the Hindu Marriage Act, right? Because it is applicable to me. Or I can get married under the Special Marriage Act, which is a secular law, which is applicable to all Indians, right? Now, if I have got married to a non-Hindu under a secular law, that is a Special Marriage Act, then my succession rights, the mode of my succession would be governed by the Indian Succession Act and not by the Hindu Succession Act. Okay, so this is as far as succession is concerned. Similar thing is with a Muslim man and a Hindu woman, or a Hindu man and a Muslim woman, or a marriage between two different religion individuals under the secular law. This is as far as the succession is concerned. So succession is always under the personal law. However, when you come to making a will, the entire testamentary jurisdiction, that is, if somebody dies without making a will, you say that that person has died intestate, that is without making a will. Now if somebody has died and leaves a will behind, then you say that this person has died leaving a testamentary will behind. So his property will be divided amongst his legal heirs or his loved ones in terms of the testamentary jurisdiction, that is in pursuance of the will that he has made. Alright, so testamentary jurisdiction is always under the Indian Succession Act, whereas succession, intestate succession, that is somebody who dies without making a will, survives, or it comes to the legal heirs in accordance with their personal law. Is that simple enough to be? I don't know. Maybe it's a little complicated, but I've tried to break it up for you. Now, another thing one must remember is, say for example, I had a very interesting case. Because Hindu Succession Law Act and personal succession laws of different religions are also a little discriminatory. See, for example, under the Hindu Succession Act, under the Hindu law, if a Hindu man dies intestate, that is, dies without making a will, his legal heirs or his property devolves upon first his class 1 legal heirs. Now, class 1 legal heirs have been described, which legal heirs are class 1 legal heirs in the Hindu Succession Act. So, when a Hindu man dies intestate, his class 1 legal heirs are his wife, his children, and his mother. Okay, so his property will be divided into each equal parts between his wife, his children, and his mother. But if a Hindu woman dies intestate, her legal heirs, her class 1 legal heirs under the succession law are only her husband and her children. Okay, so her mother, her parents don't get anything. A very interesting case happened recently. What happened was, there was a couple, and because of the COVID, very unfortunately, they passed away. See, they had not made a will. They are just like 39, 42, 45, in that age group. But obviously, they have property. They have like 20, 30 crores of worth property. All right. They didn't have children. So the property of the wife also, the wife who had died intestate of that, of that couple, she has a mother. Now her property, because there are no class one legal heirs. She doesn't have a husband. Husband died with her. She doesn't have children. So her class one, she doesn't have any class one legal heirs. So after the class one legal heirs, her property will go not to her parents but to the heirs of the husband. So you see, her husband's parents got her property also, and her own mother gets nothing. So importance of making a will. If had she left a will, she, her parents also could have been catered for, or looked after by that. So this is the importance of making a will. I hope I have not stressed it too much, Shruti, but I
No,
feel
that
it's
was
very important.
actually a very interesting, example that you gave there. But if there is nobody from the husband's heir, then how does who does it go to? I mean, it's definitely not going to
No,
the
it,
woman's side of the family.
yes, yes, yes. So it comes then the class two legal heirs. If there are no class two legal heirs, then the class three legal heirs. You have that in the Succession Act. So I'm sure somebody's got somebody.
Okay, so that, guys, that was definitely a very interesting thing. I definitely learned. I'm sure a lot of you also would have. So I do think this was another pro tip there that we have got about the will. So let's move on. So that was again very well answered. I think if there are still any doubts you have about anything particular that you kind of want to know more about, don't hesitate to drop a comment below. We are definitely going to get back to you with the answers. So of course we were talking about how it is the human tendency to kind of make wills late, but those who make it sooner are obviously smarter and are obviously as aware. But now in terms of spouses, would they be at a greater advantage if they made their wills together? I mean, could you take me a little more about that, because we have been speaking about the different scenarios, of course, and different religions, but would there be any advantage at all if they make their wills together? I mean,
Uh,
considering a lot of aspects between them would be common anyway.
Yeah, Shruti, I think partners need to make wills together so that, and they can always make provisions in their will. Say, for example, if my husband or my partner predeceases me, or if I die before him, then my property will go to so and so. And if I am alive after his death, then perhaps, or see, I die before him. Sorry, I confused you. I think I wanted to say that when partners make a will, if a wife or the one partner dies before the other person, okay, her will obviously take care of the husband. And if the husband dies, then husband dies before, then and I have bequeathed something to my husband, I can always change my will, right? So it doesn't matter if you make wills together, or if you make your will, at another time of your convenience or your comfort level. But if you're making a will, then perhaps you may make them together, so that just for convenience sake, and then who's giving whom what, and take care of your family and your children, so that no child remains uncatered for, unprovided for. That's absolutely the will, that, like I said, it's called a will of the person making the will, right? So it doesn't really matter. But yes, there's something also called life interest, Rudy. Just a quick moment over here. There's something called life interest. Say, for example, my husband, we have a house property, right? And my husband wants to give that property to my son. Okay, but at the same time, he wants to cater for my residence after his death too. So he wants that I enjoy. I'm not going to be thrown onto the street if he gives the property to my son, and my son and his wife may throw me out before, during my lifetime. So if he doesn't want that, what he can do is that make a will, say that till such time that I'm alive, I am entitled to stay in the property, enjoy the and use and utilize that property, but I don't have a right to sell the property. So in case the property after my death will then go to my son. Okay, so he can make a clause wherein he gives me life interest in the property, and thereafter he also makes an arrangement wherein after my death the property will go to me. So I don't become the owner of the property despite having a life interest in it, but I'm only able to enjoy it during my lifetime. So he protects me, he gives me shelter, but eventually passes on that property to the son. Something like that. That's also something which you can do. So I say that, please consult a lawyer, so that whatever you want to do, in whatever permutation combination you want to distribute your property, the lawyer will definitely advise you and make it very simple. You can make wills of anything and everything. Your movable properties, immovable properties. We have in our custom Shruti, I'm sure you know this, that we can bequeath our idols. The devghar which we have in the house, which your parents or your grandparents have given you. That's Chota Balakrishna. After your marriage, you must take do puja of that and all that. It's something like this is there in all the religions, or may not be a custom in your family, in a particular family. But then you can will these idols also in your will, or you can will your body parts. You can donate your organs. That also can come in your will. So you can make your will of your all your whatever is in your mind. You can state it.
And of course, I am talking to one of the best lawyers. I mean, not because of anything else. I mean, you are commendable in what you do. But from this answer, it kind of got me reminded in our own, finance industry, how we tell people that, managing money is not so difficult, but, rather than taking that what do you say, hurdle on yourself, or that whole task or responsibility on yourself, you just kind of trust an expert to do so. So I mean, the same goes in terms of a will, from what I understand, that making a will, as you've said, Mrs. Gokhale, is so simple, but again, needing a lawyer to kind of, because they know best what works, what doesn't, how to go about it. So
let me just correct you here, Shruti. Managing money is more difficult than making a will. So when somebody wants to manage money and make money out of whatever money they have, then I would strongly recommend that they consult you first, including me.
Come on, that's so sweet of you. No, but no, that was again a great answer. But now again, this question, what I want to ask you is something that's just come up, in my head when you were answering the previous question. It was definitely not, kind of thought of for asking you today. But, like you must have also had a lot of wills coming your way. So what were the common patterns that you saw, and how are people, especially considering COVID and everything, how are people kind of taking on to these wills, and what are the patterns you've observed over the at least last 2 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have actually woken up, and making a will has been something very on topmost of most people's minds, because of what has happened. So many so many uncertainties and insecurities, and we really don't know where we are headed. And anything can happen anytime. You've just woken up to that fact, and that's why I think a lot of people want to make wills. And I would advise, I would be recommending that when you make a will, ensure that you make it very simple. Don't make it complicated. Don't give a particular house property to your three children. Let three children have, don't say that all my three children will have a share in this property. Make it simple. Break it down into convenient things, so that it's difficult to execute. Right. So if you have a house property, give it to one person, and ensure that if you want to give something equal to the others, then make sure that your movables to the value of this house property will go to somebody else. Or you can even say that I have a house, after my death, please sell the house and take proceeds of distribute the proceeds of the house, sale proceeds amongst your legal heirs. But please don't make it very complicated, wherein it's very difficult for the legal heirs also to execute it. Otherwise, if you leave a house, a flat to your 2-3 legal heirs, then one of them might want to keep it, the other may want to sell it, right? So that becomes a little difficult to execute. So make it very simple, very executable, the way I would put it. So I think I have recommended all this to whoever has come to me for making a will, and I am sure that they wouldn't have any exigencies as far as the drafting of the will is concerned. Pat myself. Over to you, Shruti.
Okay, so that is a lot of understanding about the will that we have kind of learned today, understood, and a lot of you who are considering about going about making your will, thinking it's shit now, I'm too late into this already and I need to kind of make the will tomorrow or whenever it is, you know who to get into touch with. You can even leave your comments below. I'm going to leave her details somewhere towards the end of the webinar where you can directly even get in touch with her. So again, if you have learned a lot about the will today, I really need you to pause this video and like this video if you haven't already. That's a lot of basic questions that we've answered there. I'm now going to take some questions that was up on our social media handles. Now I'm going to leave this social media handle details on the screen for those of you who don't follow us on our Twitter and on our Instagram. We've got a lot of queries over the week, but because of the time constraint, I'm just going to be taking up a few, maximum of 3, Mrs. Gokhale, if that's okay with you. So I'm going to dive right into the questions that we have received. The first one is from Pooja Kant 12, that's her Instagram handle. So the first one's from Pooja. She asks us, what happens if a person dies without a last will, and can a will be duplicated for a blood relation?
Like I said, suppose somebody dies without making a will, then their property will be distributed amongst the legal heirs of that person in terms of their personal succession law. I think I explained that quite in detail in the previous question, Shruti. As far as the second part of the question is, I'm not sure I understood it very well. I don't know what Pooja means to say. That I don't know if it's not too clear to me. What did it say?
It just says, can a will be duplicated for a blood relation? I think basically, from my understanding, I might be wrong, is somebody in the same family can have the same will, like literally the same?
Sure. Yeah, but then the property, like I said, say for example, my husband and I own a flat, and if I want to give my share in the flat to my son, and my husband also wants to give his share in the flat to my son, no problem. But you can bequeath a property or will a property only that which you own, only to the extent of your share in the property. So if suppose for example in a particular inherited property, you say a Hindu joint family property, we all have, say for example, undivided interest. Then my undivided interest I can bequeath to somebody, and my husband or my partner can also bequeath his undivided interest to the same person. So sure, you can bequeath but the property, only one thing is to remember is that you can bequeath property only that which belongs to you. Right? The test here is, Shruti, that I should have the ability and the entitlement, the legal entitlement to dispose of that particular property as per my will and wishes. So that becomes my property. So as long as the property is mine, I can dispose it off the way I want, including making a will.
Okay, Pooja, now again that answer was based on something I assumed you were asking. If you still want to kind of clarify anything more, please feel free to comment below. We would love to get back to you with our answers. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is asked by Shrikant Singh. Okay, his question is, what are the main benefits of a living trust versus a last will?
So there is a difference between a trust and a will. Okay, a living trust or trust, as we call it, is for example, if I want to settle some money for the education of my niece. Okay, so I say 1 lakh rupees. I just make a trust and I say that this 1 lakh rupees I'm settling in this trust for the purpose of education of a particular object, of a particular person. Correct. So that is a trust. But as far as your will is concerned, your entire property or whatever movable and immovable property and all the things which you own or which you want to dispose of after your death can be made, can be bequeathed and can be distributed under your by your will. So it's not necessary in a will also that you need to dispose of all the property you have as per the will. Say you might want to just make a will in respect of one immovable property, and the rest of it you might feel that, oh, let it happen as per my succession act, as per the succession act, as if I have died intestate. So a particular flat I may want to give it to my son, and rest of the property can, if I don't make a will in respect of the rest of the property can be devolved upon my legal heirs as per the Hindu Succession Act. So that is the way a will works. As far as a trust is concerned, during your lifetime, you have made a trust, a living trust, or it's a trust, a private or a public trust, wherein you have settled some amount of money for a particular object for which that money is going to be used, or interest of it which is going to be used. I hope that clarifies it for your viewers.
I think that was very well explained. Okay, we'll take one more question. This is by Dia2318. So that's Dia. Her question is, how do I decide what's best for me in terms of a will?
So for that very purpose, for that very clarity, for a testator to get, like I said, you must visit a lawyer, you must visit a consultant. But like I said earlier, ensure that you don't make a will which is too complicated for you to execute. So just make sure that whatever property you have given to somebody is not going to be a problem for them to execute it, right? Like I said, a particular house property, ensure that you don't give it to 2-3 people together. So it doesn't become very difficult for them to execute. That's the way you should distribute your property, distribute your invisible or movable property.
Okay, so we come to the end of the webinar. If you still have any questions, and if you really feel that we haven't answered a lot of questions that you guys have answered, we do want to apologize. It's literally because of the constraint of time, but please do leave them in the comments section below. We'll definitely get back to you. Now, you can also reach out to Mrs. Gokhale on her email ID, which I'm going to leave on the screen, or even her Twitter handle, which I'm going to place it on the screen for you to have a look at. And if you guys miss it on the screen, of course, I completely understand. I'm going to leave it in the description box below, where you can just head and reach out to her directly post watching us. And of course, as much clarity as she has given us in today's webinar, she is going to do the same if you reach out to her personally for more doubts. Thank you once again, ma'am, for enlightening all of us on the legalities of the will. We look forward to having you on the platform again on a different topic next week. And with that, it's me signing off. Our viewers, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for personalized updates in the future, and thank you all for your time.